Welcome to the Thornton Review.
The show designed with you in mind. If it's important to you, it's important to us.
Thank you for tuning in. Charles couldn't be here today because he had a prior commitment at the Santa Rosa Island Authority, which is one of the many boards he serves on. So today we have Edwin Howard as our co-host. So Ted, thank you for co-hosting the show today. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Certainly. So my name is Edwin Howard. My friends call me Ted. I'm a native of ESCAMBIA County, born and raised here. Graduated from Tate, went to UWF, and then FSU for graduate school. And I also served in the Navy for about 29 years, active in reserve. I was a naval intelligence officer, served in Afghanistan twice. I was a peacekeeper in Liberia, did a bunch of time at sea as well, traveled a great deal. I was very fortunate when I actually to get stationed here in Pensacola at Corey Station. But my wife is also from Pensacola, and we have two sons, and so I made the decision to leave the Navy. And so I'm currently employed here with a company that does training for the Navy, and we develop training as well, travel out to D.C., and the other thing I do is I do pro bono law as well. So fortunately through the Navy I got a lot of education and managed to become an attorney as well. So I do Veterans Affairs law as well as Coast Guard suspension revocation in a pro bono capacity. Mm-hmm. So
sounds like you're a busy man. That's great. Thanks for
appreciate
being
it.
on.
It's a good way to give back.
So today our conversation will be about the courts and the comptroller position, which is a high-level executive who oversees the accounting tasks and financial reporting procedures of organizations. The comptroller oversees all accounting, including accounts receivable, payroll, and loan transactions. We wanted to know what that was all about, so we invited Pam Childers to explain it to us. But first we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back we'll begin our discussion with Pam. There is no government-funded program that can guide a man's thoughts. Only God can do that. Alpha Fence Company can install any type of fence. When you call and mention the Thornton Review, you'll receive a $100 discount on your fence. They also offer military discounts. Vinyl fence, wood fence, aluminum fence, chain link fence. If it has the word fence, Alpha Fence Company can do it. 850-586-8020. 850-586-8020. So Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's great to have you on. So you are the elected clerk of court and comptroller for Escambia County.
Correct.
Can you please explain to us exactly, it sounds like two different positions, so can you break it down for us? Can you explain to us what you do as the clerk of the court, and then explain to us what the comptroller position means?
That's probably a good way to start out, because I think there's some misconceptions about what this position does. So I'll kind of roll back to both of you and tell you it was probably back in 1970 that we had the separation of duties, right? And the state of Florida has the separation of duties until they started coming together. A governor decided that the comptroller and the clerk should be together. But it didn't happen for Escambia County until the mid-90s. So somewhere around the mid-90s, you had a situation happen in our county where the governor made the decision to put the clerk of the circuit court and the comptroller together as one elected position, like it is throughout the whole state of Florida. Mm-hmm. Right now, Orange County, Orlando, is the only area that has a separately elected clerk and a separately elected comptroller. Mm-hmm. So of the 67 counties, we have 67 clerks and comptrollers, but then you have that one Orange County that's separated into two.
Mm-hmm. Are there any municipalities where it's an appointed position or a hired position?
You're going to go down a trail of like charter government. Mm-hmm. There are situations in charter government where the duties are different for the clerk and the comptroller, and how they're elected or how they report or their duties are different. Like take Jacksonville. Jacksonville,
Okay.
Duval County is all one county. So the way it elects and who it elects and the terms are spelled out differently than Escambia County. So at this point, Escambia County is kind of normal. It's doesn't have any unified pay system like maybe you have in Miami-Dade, or one county like you have Jacksonville, or a clerk and a comptroller like you have in Orlando. And then some of the counties are charter counties, so the role of the clerk and comptroller is different. So maybe they're only the clerk with some functions of the comptroller, but not all. So think of Escambia County as kind of your more traditional way of doing it, but you want me to start and break that down for you as to what the clerk does versus the comptroller?
Absolutely. So pretty much everybody's had jury duty, whether they've been
Okay.
selected or
Start
not.
there.
And you are the person who explains what's going to happen, all the procedures and all the steps that the jurors are going to have to go through. So could you explain that? I'm sure a lot of people are interested in what to expect during jury
Sure.
duty.
We'll start jury duty. So obviously that's on my clerk side,
Uh-huh.
clerk of the circuit court and comptroller. Even though it says circuit court, it's not really talking about the circuit, the First Circuit of our area, the First Circuit of Florida, because the First Circuit is Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, and Walton. So as the clerk, I'm just over Escambia.
Okay.
So every Monday, and it's different in some of the areas, they'll do jury service on maybe a Friday or a Monday, or split it up a Monday, Tuesday. But Escambia County does it every Monday morning. So in our large room, if you've had jury duty, probably 250 people is we'll call. Now our standard in our courthouse is 20 to 24 trials. That's usually what we can handle with our capacity. So that's why we have a large call for jurors. But not every week is like that. So we'll plan our jury day 6 weeks ago. We got with all the agency partners. So you'll get with your state attorney, your judges, look at what they're planning to try, the cases that are going, whether it's criminal or civil. So you're working with third-party attorneys on civil cases. And that's when we do our calculation of jury summons needed. So that was 6 weeks ago. So when we finally get to the day of jury service, sometimes the day changes. So you'll see us excuse jurors, you'll see us hold jurors over depending on the type of trial. So Monday can change just because we planned 6 weeks ago to see you.
That sounds like a full-time job in and of itself. So
That's
you
our
must
most routine job.
You must have people working under you that that have specific tasks that they carry out and to run it. So besides jury duty, what other departments?
So explaining to you the difference between the clerk and the comptroller, I would say I have about 110 employees that are on my court side.
Okay.
And I have 50 on my finance side and 20 that are probably hybrid, just to break down, roughly a
That's a lot.
200-man operation. But in the court, we have 5 buildings. So we have the courthouse, the MCB courthouse, where you come for jury duty. Then our finance is over there at where they hold the BCC building or meetings. So that building is where all of my finance people are. Then we also are at the Bruno, the Juvenile Justice Center. So we hold court over there. Then we also have a records center on Blunt Street, and we have an office in Century. So it'll kind of tell you the width that we have throughout the county, where we are really serving everybody throughout the state. Our website is hit on daily by thousands of people throughout the state of Florida because of our records center. Everybody's trying to get records, which leads me into some of the most important things we do is gather all those records. We're gathering records for the trials. We have the historical records for marriage. We have historical records for land, which falls more on the county requirements, but it comes under the courts. So in that role, I will tell you that's probably a more I would say a more ministerial role. most of the clerk functions, and there's over 1,000 functions required by the state that is written out in the legislative, in the statutes that we have to follow. I do not report to the judges. I work with the chief judge. I work with a myriad of 14 judges every week, getting their day planned for their trial. So that's our court side, if that makes sense to you.
Absolutely.
So our most walk-in traffic is absolutely the citations. So on the first floor is where everybody pays their traffic citations, parking tickets, not City of Pensacola issued parking tickets, but those moving violations and citations. So we see a lot of people on
things
the
that would
first
have to do
floor.
with the legal system
Yes.
rather than just a parking ticket. Did you have a question about the clerk position or the role?
Well, I was just curious. So I know we talked a little bit earlier about your background and your run back in 2012, I believe. And now, just if you don't mind, I'd like to ask, what caused you to do that? What caused you to enter the I would say the political realm, but obviously, what were you trying to bring into the office, and what was your rationale in entering in that election?
Good question, because that takes us to what's the other half of my duty.
Right.
The other half of my duty is the comptroller,
Correct.
which is not ministerial at all.
Do you mind if I ask really quick? That's an important. Can you explain that distinction quickly?
Because the courts, the role of the clerk and the clerk of the circuit court is pretty much delineated in statute. There's a lot of things you must do.
Correct.
So you follow the must. But when you become comptroller, the statutes are different. You tend to have discretion and judgment. So why did I run? Mainly because in 1990, the clerk then became the comptroller, right? And being a CPA, that was very comfortable for me. I understand being a comptroller. I understand audits. I understand payments of invoices, doing payroll to employees, investment management, loans. All of that comes pretty natural to me, and I'm married to an attorney. So you think about what the courts have to do, or the clerk of court does for the courts, and that's a fit for me. So why did I run? Because it was time for a change. We had someone in office for over 55 years. We were getting very progressive with technology. There were mandates by the Supreme Court. Things needed to change in not only the courts, but on the comptroller, the way we file things and make it readily available. And things were kind of changing with laws for both the comptroller and the clerk.
And you were already working with the city, so you saw firsthand how the office was being run. You were working there, so you learned from the ground up.
Sure.
So it was a natural fit for you.
At the city, being in a role like that, being a CPA, being a finance manager, understanding what the clerk and the comptroller does, ready, I was in my mid-40s, so ready for that next step in my career. I thought that it was time to run, and with my husband's support, I have 4 children, and they're adult children now, they were very supportive, and this was a good next step in my career, because after a while, there needs to be change in your elected officials. Things happen that don't ebb and flow as well, and it's sometimes the person that's in office is not allowing the growth, or the relationships have gotten burdened.
That makes so much sense.
It was time.
Because once you're in a position for so long, you have in your mind how it's supposed to be run. And if new technology or new ideas or concepts come in, it might be harder for that person who already knows everything to grasp onto that new stuff.
Right, or want to engage in change.
Sure.
Or want to do something for the public, that the public is having an outcry. Let's say marriage online, getting married by Zoom. I don't know that the prior clerk would have engaged in marriage by Zoom. It's a technology and a service and a passionate act that we did during COVID. Okay, how are we going to do this? We are shut down by the courts. So there was a time period everybody got shut down. So how are we going to continue life? And the governor deemed my position essential, both as the clerk and the comptroller, and there were things we were trying to figure out. So embracing technology is huge. And no doubt the person that comes after me will have a set of goals for the office that they want to attain and change, and that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
So if you don't mind, so it's interesting you mentioned technology, change, things of that nature, but there also, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, there's some things that are just timeless. Integrity in government, transparency,
Right.
decision making. I could see in your comptroller position that and obviously, if you don't mind, you've been in the news lately because you've made some tough calls there, and you were engaged in litigation and everything. And I was wondering, if you don't mind, can you talk to me about how you make decisions? Like, say the recent litigation, I guess it was over the 401A, if you don't mind talking about
Right.
that. But how do you make decisions? What are your values? And then what's the background or thinking about that? Because I think a lot of people, I know when I talk to normal people, people respect you and everything, but a lot of people don't understand specifically the larger, we see the tip of the iceberg, but there was a much larger issue at play in that recent litigation. So if you're comfortable speaking about that, I think
I'm
people would love to hear.
comfortable. Those
Absolutely.
were probably a lot of thoughts and a lot of questions, so let me see
Absolutely.
if I can kind of get you, and then you just tell me
Yes, ma'am.
if there's
Absolutely.
another direction you wanted to go.
Yes,
But the 401A being a private pension, when it was brought to the table, you're hearing a 58% contribution rate. You're also hearing words like back pay.
Right.
And as you mentioned, I was at the City of Pensacola prior to this. One of the things that we did is migrate to FRS. So that particular chapter of the Florida Statutes 121 is something that I knew, I had read. I felt like I understood the spirit of the law. I had to go back and research it, but you asked me how I make decisions. It's always choosing to do what's right. It is reading policies, rules, statutes, and in this case it was statutes, it was the law. So when I went back and reflected on what I knew during that meeting and then went back and read the law, it was pretty clear to me that what was on the table was not allowed by law. I hate saying the word illegal because that tends to bring to somebody's mind criminal penalties
Right.
or jail time. So I really tried to stay with it's outside the law. So decision making then is me sitting down with my general counsel and saying, do you understand this? Can you read this with me? Okay, I'm a CPA, but I can read, right? We can read these statutes and see without looking at any forms, anything given to anyone by either an Escambia County employee or even the state of Florida. Let's look at the law. So that's what I do first. Let's read the law, because both my job or position, my duties are outlined by the statutes. So whether I've got my clerk hat on or I've got my comptroller hat on, I've got to go to the law, and that's really how we should all be doing it in government. So, why did this happen and go so far as litigation? I was the one sued as the clerk, and they wanted to protect their interest of a 58% contribution rate. I don't think that was the right decision. I wasn't able to convince them in background communications, so it went forward, and sometimes that's where you end up, settled in court.
If I may ask, so you say a contribution rate, who's paying that money, the 58%?
The 58% is a calculation. So
Okay.
a salary, let's just round it up. Salary of a county commissioner is $100,000. I think it's $98,000, so it's $100,000. So you take 58%, you times that out, and it's an additional $58,000 that comes from the taxpayers that go into a private pension. That's what was at stake.
To however many county commissioners
Correct.
sign into it.
And you asked me, is there a larger issue to this? There is a larger issue. It's called the Florida retirement system. So when the Florida retirement system changed in 2009, it had a pension reform change. They did so to protect the financial stability of the Florida retirement system that's going to provide benefits to janitors, engineers, as well as elected officials. So the integrity of that system depends on the contributions to the system. And when you're getting out of the system and the money is not going into that retirement system to make it financially stable, there's problems. That's why they changed the law.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand, if I remember reading the argument from Mr. Fleming, it was to the effect of, you said something about it's a 58% contribution. So it would be like, one of his arguments, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure he'll disabuse me of this if I'm wrong, is that you make this much money, but now that 58%, that extra money is in addition to your regular salary.
Correct.
And it's a way of skirting the fact that their salaries are appropriated by law.
Right. And you summed that up nicely, so
Right.
I'm surprised you paid attention to that. So you got it right, because anybody that's an elected official in the state of Florida, it starts with the Florida Constitution,
Right.
and it goes down to the statutes that says if you're an elected official, your salary and your benefits have to be set by general law, has to be set. So the commission can't just decide the percentage that they want to contribute to a pension. They don't have that authority, and that's what our case was about. It was about both my decision to stop it. I'm not ministerial when I'm wearing my comptroller hat. It's judgment. I cannot make an illegal payment. And just because you get it wrong the first couple of times and you do your research and you're like, oh wow, maybe we should not have paid that. Let's do that research, and you make the determination. You have to make the determination based on law.
So as comptroller, you are legally bound and legally responsible for every payment from the county that goes out.
I am.
Mhm.
I am.
So that's a big deal. That's a big job, and that's something that you definitely have to protect your integrity.
Right. We hire skilled professionals, paraprofessionals, and also degreed professionals for a reason. Because when we get to the point of the comptroller duties required under an audit, under a prompt payment act,
Right.
all the
It's
things
gotta
that
be
we
right.
do, or an investment,
It has to be legal.
there's laws that
It's
surround
bound.
all of that. And when you hire a degreed professional, they understand to read that law first.
Right.
And then let's look at our policies and procedures and make sure it lines up before we make the next step. So that's very important.
Well, we need to take a commercial break.
Sure.
And we want to remind viewers that the Thornton Review is currently interviewing candidates. So if you are currently running for office and you would like to be part of the conversation, you can reach us. You can message us on our Facebook page at the Thornton Review Show. That's the Thornton Review Show. Or you can email us at thethorntonreview@yahoo.com. So we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to continue our discussion with Pam Childers, Clerk of Court and Comptroller for Escambia County. There is no government-funded program that can guide a man's thoughts. Only God can do that. Alpha Fence Company can install any type of fence. When you call and mention the Thornton Review, you'll receive a $100 discount on your fence. They also offer military discounts. Vinyl fence, wood fence, aluminum fence, chain link fence. If it has the word fence, Alpha Fence Company can do it. 850-586-8020. 850-586-8020.
And welcome back. So we were talking during the break, and I'd like to bring these questions up as well. We talk about growth in a position, Is there anything that special insight or something that you may have learned in your tenure as clerk and comptroller? Anything you could say, it's a lesson learned, or that's something that's an area of growth in this office?
Technology.
Yes, ma'am.
Technology is an area of growth. It's what keeps me awake at night.
Technology evolves, so it's always changing.
It does, and we are constantly protecting the data. You probably know the city of Pensacola with their cyber attack.
Yes.
We also had the courts. So we are all looking at the redundancy and the protection of what's coming in. And I have it on both sides. I have it on my comptroller side, and I have it on my clerk records. And right now, if you've tried to access our system, we're down. We're down because Cox Cable had an issue with their system. So we are trying to keep our guard up while they're doing testing to get in, and it's affecting our court records, our official records. So there's more decisions to be made on how are we going to set up our backup so that people have access. Yes, people want 24/7 access now, right?
Right.
So that's what you're trying to provide them. And all of our records were paper. Paper. In the morning, when we got ready to go to court, they were pushing 200 files to the courtroom, and we're not now.
And this, you said something about there was a September attack or something of that nature?
September attack
An incident?
was with the courts.
Yes, ma'am.
The courts here in our courthouse here in Escambia County, and it was the First Circuit that took them down. So we have the redundancy, and they could continue to operate our system. So had our systems been together, because in the state of Florida, there are systems where the clerk and the court have their systems together. We have kept separate from the courts and from Escambia County. So the clerk and comptroller records are separate. And in this situation, it was a really good decision because we didn't miss a day of court. We continued.
Do you file and store the paper records?
Not anymore. What I'm trying to do, my goal here this next 4 years is get all those old records scanned and get them available at your fingertips.
So
there's so many records I got to keep for 99 years.
Okay.
So I don't want to keep paper and warehouse forever. We need to get them scanned.
So you have 99-year-old records?
Yes, we do.
Do you have any older than that? Or do you?
We kept, funny that you asked, because we just did this. We have a lot of old records, the Bundy files. Of course, that's within the 99 years, but a lot of old property records. We just entered into agreement with UWF and just completed that, I think about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Where we are shifting a lot of the old records that we have scanned, but want to preserve. And we went into a partnership with UWF.
I was going to say, I hope you're not shredding those 100-year-old records.
No, we're not. But that was a great find. One of my managers, Robert Smith, over my records center.
That's great.
He got
great news.
with the dean out there, and we were able to do a contract where you can do, it's not genealogy per se, different kinds of records, but we also established and kept historical records for genealogy. We set up a place you could research even in Century, so that everyone could get to those records. We just duplicated the records and sent it up there.
It goes to government being accessible, accessible government, and I think it's called Moore's Law. That technology change every 2 years, it doubles the capacity of a semiconductor or something, and so there's that piece, accessibility, but also the trust that people provide a lot of very sensitive information to you, and so I don't know if you could just, if you mentioned the cyber attack, the ransomware, things of that nature against the city. I think it was a ransomware against the city. Yes, ma'am. What kind of planning or thinking or what kind of assets are you putting against that?
I am going to start with dress code. Hard way to describe what we're going to do, but I tell my folks all the time, you deal with people's lives and money.
Right.
They trust you. You need to look like they trust you. So we start with dress code so that anybody interfacing with our office looks at the person across the counter, not only looks at them as a person, how they're dressed, how they speak, but the information we provide to them. So trust is most important because that's our integrity, right? So the next thing we have to do is make sure we're protecting their documents. They're giving us financial disclosure forms. They're giving us Social Security numbers for their children. There's a lot of things in our files we have that we need to redact properly because they need to trust us when they come and interact to our building. On the comptroller side is a little bit different than the courts. The comptroller side typically doesn't have private information or confidential information. It might have sensitive information, but you still have to protect it. So from a cyber attack or just from something getting downloaded that shouldn't, even if it could have been downloaded, it shouldn't have been in that environment. So we have it on both sides of the street in protecting documents and information of everybody out there. Because I told you, throughout the state of Florida, thousands and thousands of users daily are on our systems.
So you have a cybersecurity, you have a, I guess I'd imagine also a physical security concern with your facilities?
Absolutely.
So you have a very full plate.
Yes.
Wow.
Security is top notch.
So as an elected position, your first priority is you are a public servant.
Correct.
Servant leader,
I have
should
a
say.
servant's heart.
Yeah.
No, I have a servant's
Servant
heart.
leader. But who exactly do you work for? Is it the commissioners, the judges,
That's
Governor
interesting.
DeSantis?
Right. A lot of people think that I work for the judge. Then others think that I report to the county commissioner.
Yeah.
I don't report to either. I first report to the public, but Governor DeSantis is my boss. But the people are who I report to. That is the expectations that are set, is for the people. But that's why I have independence from the court and I have independence from the county commission to be able to make the decisions that are needed, to be able to follow the laws that are requested and put on me as an elected official. So I will tell you, DeSantis doesn't call me, nor does he send me flowers or a letter, but he knows what I do, and there are expectations set, and there are always folks watching what elected officials, how they're conducting themselves. Are they conducting themselves with honor and according to the law?
Yeah, because you're well known in the public. You're an elected official.
Right.
Your name is on the ballot.
Right.
So obviously your first priority is, to the public.
Right.
And to abide by the laws, to do your job with integrity and honesty, sincerity.
Yeah, and I think I said it when we were talking, that always choosing to do what's right. When you choose to do what's right and you've done your research, I think that's what the public expects of you, is to make those
What's
good
right
decisions.
for the public as a whole, for the community. What's right for the community? We're all paying taxes.
Right.
And if those funds are misappropriated, if the budget doesn't line up, then it's a disservice to the taxpayer.
There's no doubt that our
So you have to
taxpayers are not happy right now. I think I read an article in the paper in the last week about how much has been spent on lawsuits. And there's probably a lot that the public doesn't understand about the lawsuits or even really what it's about. I mean, they've elected you to handle it, right?
Right.
But then they sort of get a flavor of what those lawsuits are about, and I think they're a little disgruntled of what has happened lately with their tax dollars, and I get it. I sit in the seat as comptroller, but there are obligations on me to pay those invoices when they come to me for representation or settlement.
Don't mind me asking, do you have an idea, I mean, a total surprise question, I imagine, but how much the county does pay in litigation or attorney's fees or things of that nature?
Or you could break it down. How much did they pay recently for the most recent lawsuit?
I
for the
certainly
401A?
could give you a report because it's public information.
Absolutely.
And I was asked this just recently, but I think you had one of the most recent lawsuits settle for close to $5 million.
Wow.
That was just the most recent lawsuit. Before that, you
And
had,
that's taxpayer money?
yes.
Wow.
That is ESCAMBIA County in the Ramey Edler, the medical director's lawsuit.
Right, okay.
Before that, I think you had a $3.9 million settlement for the airport. I can't remember all the
Wow.
numbers, but we've also
So it's
paid
the
bills on the
millions.
401A lawsuit.
Uh-huh.
So, you have $200,000 there that we've paid in legal fees.
That's
So
almost a
all
quarter of a
these
million.
lawsuits, when you're paying attorneys $400 an hour,
Wow.
they add up.
Mm.
I'm curious, it'd be just totally kind of brainstorming here, it'd be interesting to see where Escambia County rates out compared to other counties of its size.
Same size.
Absolutely. I mean, I could understand if you're Miami-Dade, you probably have significant
Sure.
legal. But
They're
if you're
huge.
Escambia County, so that's interesting.
We have a lot of shade meetings, and we've had a lot of lawsuits lately. And I've been in office for 12 years. So when I say lately, I mean the last 4 years.
Right.
Last 4 years, I think, has been pretty rough here in Escambia County.
So obviously you're under sunshine law.
Mhm.
Can you explain shade meeting? Some people might not understand what a shade meeting is.
A shade meeting with the Sunshine Law,
Mhm.
it allows the county to discuss this litigation that they have. They do have to advertise what the topic is going to
Okay.
be. So
Mhm.
let's say it says Medical Director Ramey Edler. They'll advertise that they're going to have a shade meeting to discuss that.
Mhm.
So they can go in a private room, have a conversation. There's always a court
It's
reporter.
recorded. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah.
There's going to be a transcript, and those transcripts are released and put on my website
Okay.
once that matter is disposed of
Mhm.
and the case is closed.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
they will be available to the public, and it does get some sunshine, but the county
Yeah.
commissioners with their attorney have that right.
Mhm.
I'm not in those meetings either, so
Mhm.
does not include me.
Mhm.
That's interesting. So,
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love it. So, how do we're all Republicans. Is there any reconciliation with all of these lawsuits going on? There has to be some animosity. There has to be some hard feelings somewhere along the line. How do we come together as Republicans?
That's a hard one to ask.
I
I'll
know.
just say
Sorry.
that
Sorry for asking the toughest question.
once you've gotten into litigation with somebody, when they
Mhm.
sue you, they tend not to be your go-to anymore,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
Tend not to be somebody you seek out and talk to or
Mhm.
trust. So it does break the relationship when there's a lawsuit. I don't think you see a lot of attorneys that fight each other in court all day long, go have a cocktail together.
Right, correct.
That's hard to do. So
Mhm.
yes, we have several Republicans on our commission. I'm a Republican. I'll have a hard time rebuilding relationships with individuals
Mhm.
I don't know that I respect or trust.
Mhm.
It does take time.
Mhm.
They have to change. I need to have an awareness of the change. I need to conduct myself with integrity. That's our word. But how do we come together as Republicans? We're having this problem throughout every state
Mhm.
in the United States of getting along
Mhm.
within party.
Mhm.
But I will tell you, as a clerk and a comptroller, I represent the Democrats, the Republicans,
absolutely.
the independents.
Yes.
And we all need to
Mhm.
get along, and we all need to follow the law. It's just a
Mhm.
little hard to have someone in your inner circle
Mhm.
that has just sued you, or
Mhm.
they've said you're going to be personally liable and continue to hammer you with personal liability when I've read the law, and that's why we swept their accounts
Right.
with the 401A,
Mhm.
because it wasn't within the law. So it's hard to take. It's
Well,
hard to take.
do they realize that it wasn't in the law? I mean, I guess they do now, but you also have to look at moral and ethical duties as an elected official. If it's against the law, it's against the law. You can't do it. If you can kind of bend it a little bit, is it moral and ethical too?
I
You
think
know,
that's where the taxpayers or the voters need to pay attention
Mhm.
to what's happening with their elected officials. Are your elected officials in your district or your person, are they representing your interest or theirs?
Mhm.
Do you trust them to make good decisions? Is there some other interest that they're pursuing that doesn't appear to be open, transparent?
Mhm.
I mean, all of those are
Or
words we
good
use in government.
Good for the community.
So it is
good
the
for everybody.
people that will judge the
Mhm.
the ethical and moral decisions. The illegal decisions can be handled by the court, and they have been. That's what's been going on lately. But ethical and moral, that's where your voters need to be informed. You've got what, District 1, 3, and 5 up for re-election for your county commission?
Or was it 4, I believe?
Yes, 4
Yeah,
has an
4.
open seat.
Has an open seat.
Correct, it's not its year, but it has an open seat.
Absolutely. Interesting. Wow.
Stay informed.
Don't mind me asking, what would you recommend if people want to stay? So this gets asked a lot. People, I don't know where to go for trusted information, or where do I? You can go on, media or whatever. But I think there's very little trusted media. How would you recommend people stay informed?
By watching the Thornton Review.
Right.
Absolutely.
Step one. First of all, know who your district representative. If we're staying with the county commissioners,
Right.
know who your district representative is.
Mhm.
Read the paper, the P&J. Then go to somebody you trust, a friend, somebody you think has an ear to the ground, reads the paper or reads and watches the Thornton Review, or has someone that really understands the issues because they keep their ear to the ground. You talk to people. You find out what's going on. You have to. And local politics matter probably more than federal politics, because
There's
who
a trickle
you
down
elect
or
and the
trickle up.
decisions they make are going to affect your everyday living. So when people say, "Oh, I don't really pay attention to politics," you better.
Do you think your background as an accountant? First of all, I don't mind me asking, why did you become an accountant? I don't know anybody. I mean, I don't like numbers. Maybe that's me. But why did you
Growing
become?
up in Vegas, I don't know.
Oh.
I don't gamble. I'm not a big drinker.
Your brain is just geared a certain
It
way
is. My
because
dad's
you
an
have to be
engineer
you have to be a special type of thinker to be an accountant.
Is
I
that-
wanted to be a CPA since I was in ninth grade. I was
Wow.
fascinated.
Do you think
by
that
it.
helps you?
That's awesome.
When we talk about making logically and ethically consistent decisions, pursuing things, based on rules, kind of a rules-based
It's who I am.
right? Do you
Yes.
think that your background as a CPA, or maybe the motivation you had to become a CPA, is what guides that as well?
It does for me. I think a county commission, that has to be a little different. You've got to have integrity and trust, and you have to have vision for the county as a whole. We've got an old law in the books where we have districts. That would be nice if that went away, or we added a couple of more at-large on our county commission to help make some of those visionary. I'm not a visionary, right? I'm black and white. I'm numbers. I do better in that position. But other people have better vision, and they'll make good decisions, and they'll get good impact from all walks of life that are voters and the public as to how we're going to mold Escambia County.
Right? That's a big job. County commission is
It
a big
is.
job.
It is,
'Cause
and you're not going to
there's-
make everybody happy. But if you can be transparent, if you can
Absolutely.
follow the law and the policies and keep your
If you can be
policies updated.
ethical and know
Sure.
that you are working for the good of the entire community.
Right. And double tongue, double standards, not what we need. We understand if you have to change your mind. That's why you should be up there and say, more information has come to my attention. And this was my stand, and I'm versus maybe being forked tongue or talking out of both sides of your mouth, or writing blogs that aren't exactly correct.
How long you've lived in Escambia County? How long now?
Let's see, I moved here out of high school to go to Florida State, so I've been here a good while. I'm
Understand.
not from here, but I've been here a good while.
Understood. Got it. So you talk about a vision for Escambia County, and I'm curious as to where your office, I mean, the rule of law, trust, things of that nature, but where your office fits into that vision or that future of Escambia County.
My vision is one small sliver of maybe a growth vision.
Right.
And technology can be part of that. The access to justice
Right.
and the courts, the ability to see financial information of our county. All of that should be what I provide, the transparency that I provide. And we're getting better and better about it on our website, the reports that we offer, the audit outcomes that are out there to read.
How often you mentioned audits? How many audits are there? Is there a periodicity to those? Are they required by law? Or
Required by law. Some people request to have them done. Some are from the legislature required. So you have comptroller required audits and clerk required audits. I'm under audit almost every month. Every week that I breathe, there are auditors. So I'm constantly, so doing the right thing is easy because I'm audited constantly.
Who's auditing you?
I have DFAS DFS that will audit us.
Right.
You have the Article 5 audits that are on the court side. You will have the financial audits that are required annually on the comptroller side. You will have operational audits on the Tourist Development Commission. That council requested an audit. That was done. You have, there's just a myriad of
So you
audits
have
that
to
we
know
to
the
do.
law.
You have
And
to.
if you don't know it, you have to have somebody right beside you who can
Sure.
read it and know it.
And,
you have
and
to have
I'm not telling you I'm
multiple
going to
people.
get it right every time.
Uh-huh.
We strive that. But sometimes you missed a legislative update. You didn't see that changed because so much of it gets programmed into our financial system, the system we use. But we should be pretty clean, and we've been pretty clean for 12 years. I'm quite proud of the outcome of every audit we have had in my tenure. Very proud.
What is your greatest contribution or your greatest achievement as the clerk of court and comptroller so far since 2013?
I hate to use the most recent example, but standing up to say no to a commission that wanted back pay and a 58%, that was
Thank
hard.
you. The entire community,
It's hard.
entirety of Escambia County thanks you.
It made a lot of people uncomfortable because they didn't understand it, or they had friendships with certain people. So I tried to stay a little bit quiet about it. If somebody asked me, I would speak. But keeping a stand for 3 years was probably my proudest achievement, is being able to convey the law to the people and to the paper, the media, and to the courts.
Well, that was a job well done. Thank you.
When you went through that, and if this is too personal, you can tell me to be quiet. It won't hurt me. But I always ask people, how did you survive, or how did you?
I know.
Like I've met men who were POWs in Hanoi,
That had to have been stressful.
and I'll ask them like, how'd you survive, or how did you survive that, or whatever. And they always say, I focused on this, or I focused on that, or I drew strength from, I knew that there would be an exit. And I was wondering, when you were experiencing all this as a public official, we don't see the private side of public officials. And
Sure.
if you don't mind me asking, once again, you don't have to answer, please. But what sustained you? What made you continue?
It was right. But I have a husband that's very supportive, 4 kids, 4 adult children.
Right.
Very supportive, and they're attorneys and CPAs. They understand the law too. They could read this and know that their mom was right and could stand behind me. And, they'd stop by with Baskin-Robbins. Mom, tell me about the case. And they showed interest. And I had the public stop by every now and then, pat me on the shoulder and say, I know it's tough. Keep the stand, you're doing the right thing. That gives you energy
Yeah.
to continue through it for 3 years.
Your
It was
chil-
hard.
Your children, an example.
Yes.
Yeah.
An example.
Children, as I will tell you, my general counsel, Cody Lee, outstanding. A great human, a great person, a great lawyer. Younger, I want to say Cody's around 40, so no experience really in the courtroom to be able to try a case like this, but he took second chair to Ed Fleming, and they represented the law, and very proud of them and their ability to do so with integrity.
Absolutely.
We've known Ed. I know
Oh,
yeah.
Ted knows Ed quite well. So,
Good person.
yeah.
Phenomenal attorney. I mean, an excellent attorney and an excellent human being.
You would be surprised how many people did not want to take this case because it's a small town and they have
Right.
interaction.
Of
And so I
course.
was kind of a vacuum cleaner salesman walking around trying to
I
find
believe
door to
it,
door.
yeah.
Will you consider taking my case? And I explain it, and they're like, yes, we understand what you're doing.
You drop
and
some
no, we
names and
cannot
then
take
no,
it.
yeah.
Ed Fleming reminds me, when I was in law school, I had a professor who was very much a liberal. She'd worked in the Justice Department Civil Rights Division for 30 years in D.C. And I asked her, who was the best attorney general? And she said, William French Smith. And my jaw dropped because he was President Reagan's first attorney general. And I asked her, why would you say that? And she'd say, because he was a lawyer's lawyer. He was about the rule of law. And he was about being a good attorney and upholding the law, the rule of law and justice. And just talking about Ed, I just kind of, I just thought,
Statesman.
Ed is he is truly a lawyer's lawyer.
Sure.
In like the William French Smith. So that
Wow.
took a lot of courage on everyone's part to take this case.
It did, because when you go through something like this and you have your own business,
Right.
you wonder if you'll get any other cases from Escambia County. I'm talking about Ed's business here, but anybody is going to think about their own future.
Sure.
But Ed was thinking about the public's future in this case, and I really appreciate his support.
I believe this is like the first. It's kind of a groundbreaking case in some ways. So
Well, go ahead.
it's just in some ways it's kind of been a first kind of a case of the first of its kind case in this
Sure.
state.
All of Tallahassee was watching it, and they were watching
Wow.
it throughout the state of Florida. So it wasn't just about Escambia County. It was about changes that could come about at the Florida retirement system.
Yeah, absolutely. And any county could go through the same thing.
Right.
So thank you, Ted,
Oh, thank you.
for
Appreciate it.
being co-host and filling in for Charles. Charles is a very, very busy person. We all know that. And he just had a prior
Absolutely.
obligation that he couldn't get away from. But I'm really
Privileged to
glad
be
that
here. I appreciate your time too.
I appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show.
Enjoyed it.
It was an extremely great conversation, and I learned a lot, and I'm so glad to have you here. The Thornton Review is on the air to provide public service awareness and intellectual infrastructure to our community. You can watch our program on our newest outlet, Pensacola Urban Network, Praise TV on WBQP 12.1 and 12.8, and you can watch us on Praise TV on Roku Television Network, or download Praise TV on Google Play Store. This show is made possible by Ida Gates Godly Teas LLC, Alpha Fence Company. Our guest, Pam Childers, thank you for coming on the show. We want to thank Edwin Howard for being our co-host, and we thank you for watching this episode of the Thornton Review. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Pam Childers. I'm the elected clerk and comptroller, and I invite you to watch the Thornton Review for current information. It's best to stay informed, and you can do that at Thornton Review.